Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? Spectre here on the 5 by 5 network here this afternoon. Good to have you aboard. We have got a lot of news to get caught up on here this afternoon. And again, this is only just the midday, so this is going to be a whirlwind tour. Hopefully, I can get through it here in about 60 minutes. A little bit of a PSA for all of you folks tuning in. We are going to be broadcasting here later on this evening at 9 Eastern. You'll want to tune in there. The links and that out there. Stream set up on the YouTube side, D Live, Twitch, etc. And that'll be at 9 Eastern is when live for coverage of the election as results pour in, as the polls start closing, etc., around the country here. And of course, there's all sorts of shenanigans going on out there today. We're going to hit some of that stuff. And so before I get into that, I'm going to bring up here real quick what I had on show last night, in case you missed it. Broadcast over on the Tiger Network underneath my channel. If you missed it, it's called Midnight Rider. You can check that out over there. But nonetheless, let's open this thing with a bang, shall we?
You ain't the same on the game. Hey, Donald Trump is your president, and if you like it or not, keep that energy you had with Barack, cause you know this Trump train don't stop.
There we go. It's just a short clip, but it's very fitting because yesterday, I don't know if you happen to see it, but a lot of these Amish folks, presumably in Pennsylvania, managed to escort the Biden-Harris bus out of town, much like what we saw in Texas over the weekend. And so I just wonder if one of those Amish guys is probably going to get accused of trying to run the bus off the road. All sorts of shenanigans and whatnot going on there. So nonetheless, let's get into it. There is a lot going on. I'm going to start off with what's going on the boards this afternoon, what the Anons are digging on. And this in and of itself could essentially be the show. But wait, there's more. Thank you to you guys and that tuning in on all of the various platforms. Looks like we got a couple hundred of you over on the YouTube side. Looks like on the D Live side, we've got, I'd say about another 100 plus. I got one or so on Twitch, couple on Periscope. Good to have you guys aboard. I will say this, based on some of the shenanigans going on these platforms today, if by chance there are any sort of glitches, hangups, things of that nature, we're just going to say bye-bye, YouTube, and I'll just shut that stream off and we'll continue going on the rest of the platforms because I just don't have time for it, frankly. They're cooked at the end of the day. The game is up, and we're going to take the fight right back to you. So there you have it. I'm just stating our position right up front. And if by chance you're not on those platforms, just know that DLive, Twitch, Periscope, we're going to continue the show right there. All right, so let's get to the boards here. Coming off the boards, the judge rules Governor Newsom violated California Constitution again with June order for mail-in ballots. And I did cover that a bit in last night's show, article out of Breitbart. Yes, this dumps back to a June edict, a decree that he kicked out. And of course, there are now some 75, 57, I can't remember which, all the numbers and that surrounding it, but there are copious amounts of edicts and decrees that Newsom has put out. Utter ridiculousness. He needs to be shut down and stopped. Deutsche Bank wants to sever ties with Trump by offloading business loans. And of course, for those paying attention, they have been after Trump's not only tax records, but business dealings and that any which way they can try and get at him, including up to and going to Deutsche Bank and all of his business dealings. Thousands of witches are casting binding spells on Donald Trump to lose the election. So don't think for 1 second that we are not battling in a spiritual realm here, folks. There's a reason why Ephesians 6 is called into play. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the powers, the spirits, things outside of this world at the end of the day. And whether or not you choose to believe that witches and demons and things of that nature exist, they certainly do. And if you are a praying folk, I suggest you pray in the spirit as well to counter the attacks against these folks and lay them by the wayside, because there is only one person, one true God who controls all of the situation, and that is Yeshua himself. All right, UK raises terror alert level to severe, meaning attack highly likely. And it's very interesting that all these attacks are occurring in Europe all within the last few days. I wonder why that is. There's a little thing like Brexit Net that's trying to get finalized. You got COVID lockdowns, and then all of a sudden in France and Vienna and UK, now you got all these terror alerts. Hmm. Very interesting. I think I skipped one. Biden is planning to declare victory if news organizations say he won the presidential election, even if Trump won't concede. So, yeah, they're going to try to steal this outright. They're going to let their lapdog media try and be their lackeys and promote the propaganda, show us fake maps, probably show us exit polls, show us a bunch of garbage numbers and that, thinking and trying to sway the populace into thinking that POTUS lost the election. No, I don't think it's going to work that way. I don't think too many people are probably going to be tuned into the big networks at the end of the day, and I think that their strategy will fail. In any case, let's continue on. It says cap of locked breads. All right, don't know. The steal is on in Philly. Man caught handing out Democrat literature to voters in line to vote. Oh, that's a big no-no. But hey, I'm sure that'll get dealt with promptly. Says was always told that the machines automatically shut off at 8 p.m. even if they are in use. Also, this was retweeted by the PAAG. Is he supposed to be neutral? That's a very good question because the AG of Pennsylvania has flat out come out and supported Biden in recent days. I think there's plenty of outlets that have covered that story. Some of tech's biggest names donated millions of dollars ahead of the 2020 election, and most of it went to the Dems. Well, there's a big shock, right? And I covered some of that on the broadcast last night as well. The Amazons, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Googles. Where are their dollars going? And quarter by quarter, year over year, most all of them have increased, with the exception of Microsoft. I think theirs was the only one that actually went down by way of any sort of lobbying and everything else. Stock market predicts Trump will defeat Biden. Yeah, if you're following Zero Hedge today, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs all have something to say about that, as if their opinion really matters at the end of the day with their algorithms and prediction models and everything else. Well, we know a thing about models, don't we? Look at what we found out via the Imperial College in the UK per the COVID stuff, right? Yeah, it was pretty doggone not accurate. So in any case, continuing on, let's see. Every time you see fraud or illegal electioneering at a polling place, reply to this tweet with photographs or video, especially in Philadelphia, which sadly has become infamous for cheating. I'll afford Republican legal staff to use in the inevitable court cases coming up. I don't have that particular tweet in hand. This is one of the notables. You'll probably have to go back to that particular bread in order to steal that tweet out if by chance you come across anything. Trump / MAGA motorcade in Old Jerusalem. All right. Cyber Daily. Officials on watch for disinformation if 2020 election results are delayed. And of course, yes, that's exactly what they want to try and do. And in the meantime, we know that they're going to fire up their base, put them out in all these blue cities, try and stir up strife, just a little looting, just peaceful protests, just five-finger discount here and there, no biggie. But hey, fired FBI Director Comey posts pro-Biden photo on election day. Trump voters weigh in. Tracking live results tonight as they come in. Yeah, we'll be doing the same right here. You'll want to tune back into the channel. Poll faggots have Biden over the electorates needed to win at 290, 1 hour after polls open on the West Coast. Oh, isn't that interesting? Yeah, so beware of the fake numbers coming from the likes of the CNNs, the MSDNCs, the ABCs, CNBCs, all the major three-lettered networks. Nonetheless, 3 people involved in Vienna attack have dual citizenship of Austria and North Macedonia, police say. So I guess this probably lends itself to the migration of folks out of Africa and the Horn and everywhere else into the EU over the last, 5 years now? Yeah, it's coming home to roost. War Room, Pandemic Episode 472. Apparently talking a little bit about Bannon's show here today. Not sure what all happened there, but highlighted here on the boards this afternoon. Third Landing Support Battalion activates aboard Camp Foster. And aside from that, I will say that yes, yesterday late we found out that the National Guard is indeed wheeling into many cities, pre-positioning here ahead of the election. What particular cities in question, I don't recall off the top of my head. However, they are getting geared up. General Flynn, our media will spin a disaster scenario over the coming days. They want to crush your morale and make you believe your rightful vote doesn't count. Oh, we have wild enthusiasm on the side of light. We hear crickets from the dark side. Your vote matters, so vote. And that's per General Flynn here today. James Woods shining light on campaigning at polling place violations in Philly. So more light shed on that. Vietnamese people rooting for Donald Trump's victory over rival Joe Biden. Well, isn't that interesting? So we got people across the pond to the left coast cheering on POTUS. Good to see that. Breaking voting machines down in Westmoreland and Philadelphia counties and PA. No surprise there. We've got some stories in the lineup here this afternoon to cover some of that as well. True the vote. Let's see, Biden in Scranton, PA this morning with granddaughters in tow. Natalie wearing an interesting shirt. I did not get a chance to see that, but I'll take their word for it. USPS finds 62 ballots among 180,000 pieces of delayed mail in Miami-Dade post office. Oh, more U.S. Postal Service shenanigans, huh? I guess we're just supposed to look the other way and pretend that never happened, huh? Exactly. Some astute Anon called this yesterday. Westmoreland and Philly counties, voting machines down. Second coverage of that. Sealed indictments, Northern District of Illinois, Chicago, 5,500 in August/September. So apparently the sealed indictments count is out now, rounding out end of October, which brings to a close of almost 3 years of tracking these indictments. It's time to start opening them. Let's get the job done. Mr. Durham, let's get after it. Per Spalding County elections, all voting machines are down. I'm not sure where Spalding County is. Pennsylvania? Anybody out in chat happen to know, perhaps? I don't know. Let's see. Heated exchange. Rudy Giuliani on election 2020. Hunter Biden and big tech censorship. And yes, I covered an article out of DC Clothesline in the overnight last night talking about that. Old at Jack is harboring pornography, child pornography specifically. So yeah, not good. But in the meantime, they want to cover up the pictures and videos that we're getting out of China by way of Hunter Biden. So cover, as it were. What the F voting machines down like everywhere. Yeah. Best Trump photo. New Dan Scavino. Combs didn't finish her first bread and baked another. All right. The YMCA Trump dance. What a class act. All right. And breaking, less redacted Mueller report shows that Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, and Roger Stone were investigated. So that's there's a couple more. Sorry. Trump warns U.S. could never be the same if Biden wins. Obviously, we've heard that in many of his rallies, or should I say peaceful protests, rather. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Let me use the proper terminology. The peaceful protests over the last 3 days that comprised about 15 or 17 stops, I think it was, all across the land here. So yes, a lot of the same messaging and that being said by POTUS. Breaking voting machines down in Westmoreland, Philadelphia counties. Yet again, another Anon picks that up. And thread, voter machines down, tracking. So apparently there's problems with the voting machines. Well, isn't that interesting? I think I got a story along those lines in here today, and we'll see if we can come across that. And like I said, I got a lot on the lineup here, so bear with me. I'm not going to read every single story too much into, and we're certainly going to have a lot more coverage here tonight. By the way, if you're on Twitter sharing a lot of this stuff out, be careful out there because we're already seeing accounts in that getting scrubbed. One of which I think we saw early this morning via SV News has already had their account suspended. So be careful on how you put this stuff out there. Camo it, whatever you got to do. All right, so I'm going to lead off with this story out of Paul Joseph Watson's Summit News. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff tells TV news anchors military won't intervene in election. Mark Milley makes clear troops won't remove Trump from the White House, nor should they. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff held an off-the-record video meeting with TV anchors from CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox News in which he asserted that the U.S. military will not intervene in the aftermath of the presidential election. And considering the source here, Axios, the nation's top military officials set up Saturday's highly unusual call to make clear that the military's role is apolitical. Mark Milley also sought to dispel any notion of a role for the military in adjudicating a disputed election or making any decision around removing a president from the White House. ABC's George Stephanopoulos, CBS's Nora O'Donnell, NBC's Lester Holt, CNN's Jim Scudio, and Fox's Martha McCallum were all present on the call. The meeting followed Joe Biden's recent remark to The Daily Show's Trevor Noah that he was absolutely convinced the military would escort Trump from the White House in a dispatch if he refused to leave office. And as we highlighted earlier, National Guard troops are already in place in several U.S. cities in preparation for any civil unrest, with polls showing 77% of Americans fearing violence to be likely. The Biden campaign has already asserted that under no scenario will it allow Trump to claim victory tonight. The former VP is also planning to address the nation and assert control as the president-elect if he is declared winner by news organizations, even if President Trump refuses to concede. So yes, this is where it's going to get very interesting, right? Because we know, like I said, that the National Guard has been pre-positioned in recent days, a lot of movements. Saw video footage of that on certain outlets here in the last 24, 48 hours. It's going to be very contentious. We had the campaign manager for Joe Biden come out and say under no circumstances will he concede. We've had HRC in recent weeks come out and say the very same thing. So the only way I see this playing out is that this thing has to be an absolute landslide. It has to be undisputed, and it has to be in such a way that the Mockingbird media networks cannot dispute it. There is no way, even with all of the votes in that they think that they're going to get by mail-in ballots, are ever going to be able to overcome the enormous lead. It's the only way I see it playing out for that to happen. Obviously, the polls in that have been wrong from the start, just like we saw in 2016. They did not learn their lessons. They continued down the same path. Not only did they continue down that same path, but they doubled down on it, tripled down on it, quadrupled down on it, and put everything they had into it to make people believe that the polls are correct. And somebody who is stuck in his basement suddenly and mysteriously has the lead. Baloney. It's all freaking baloney. All right, well, continuing on, let's highlight the fact that, like I said, Twitter is already banning accounts. He says, here we go. Twitter is locking down accounts. This over on Gab, somebody highlighting that. I got Crisis Intel, FJ News Reporter, and SV News Alerts all having their accounts suspended. That was posted here a couple hours ago. So again, if you're on those platforms, be careful how you present the material, because we already know they showed their hand. Whether you're on Facebook, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Twitter or anything of the like, Section 230 be damned. They are towing the line for Joe, and they've bought into his product, hook, line, and sinker. They're backstopping him. He's got campaign contributions up the wazoo from them, and that's their guy. And so they're going to try and steal it at all costs. And we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. All right, so no particular order on this stuff, folks. So it's going to seem a little bit ad hoc, but nonetheless, we'll get through it. Out of Gateway Planet breaking update: early voter turnout in Florida indicates a very big day for President Trump. And again, folks, if you've seen anything in the last several days of the, I think it was 17 total peaceful protests that POTUS had, they were quite grand in scale, unlike the other side where they could barely draw about a dozen cars. So if that is any sign, then this is very telling. This is early voting in the very important state of Florida is showing a very strong turnout for President Trump. Trump visited Democrat stronghold 2 nights ago and held a huge rally after midnight. and that being down in Miami-Dade. It says Joe Hoft, oh my God, what a mega crowd at midnight in Miami. And there you see some of the crowd there. See if this will play through briefly.
It's not there for them. They had to get out to that big early lead, and it could be that we're leading. That's a little problem. 2 days from now, we're going to win my home state of Florida. It's not there for
yeah, where the heck was the stage in that mass of folks? Good Lord. So please, again, tell me, Mockingbird Media, Big Tech, how do you think that Joe is going to win this with only a couple dozen supporters turning out? Oh, that's right. You mean you're going to have to deceitfully steal it and try and steal it at all cost through deception and, the dirty tricks you guys typically play. So, yes, that being in Miami. All right, continuing on, it says today, early voting out of Florida shows a likely red wave by day's end, and that's provided that the voting machines are actually still working, given the reports that we're seeing off the boards this afternoon. Florida County, which Obama won in 2012, is currently showing President Trump annihilating sleepy Joe Biden. And it says in 2012, Obama won Pinellas County, Florida. Today, Trump is annihilating Biden about 75 to 25 in Pinellas. That via Airboss Analytics. On the other hand, early results out of Democratic stronghold Broward County are abysmal. And of course, we've seen in recent days attempts to do all sorts of funky business and that dead people trying to be registered to vote yet again. And for whatever reason, it always seems like Broward County ends up being the county in question down there for whatever reason. It says it looks like Florida is voting for Trump and dancing to the song, I will vote for Donald Trump. And there we see some of the tweets in that regard. All right, continuing on. Out of Breitbart here, says the steal is on in Pennsylvania. Poll watchers denied access, illegal campaigning at polling stations. And this carrying on what we found off the boards, Election Day kicked off with a bout of chaos in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with poll watchers reportedly denied access and witnesses alleging illegal campaigning at various polling locations. According to Trump 2020 EDO Director Mike Roman, Dem election officials are banning Trump poll watchers all across the city. As one video shows, another photo on social media shows a physical barrier, which Roman says Democrat officials are using to keep poll watchers far from the counting tables. So let's take a peek at this.
You're not letting me in? Well, what? No. That's why I told you, call the police. Do it. If you legal, call the cops.
The city guy.
Okay.
Call that number. Tell them to call somebody.
I have a citywide watcher certificate.
It's not for this
No,
location.
it's not for it. Is not. Is this the city of Philadelphia? This is the city of Philadelphia. This is the city of Philadelphia. This is the city of Philadelphia. You wanted to talk. You wanted to talk outside. Let's talk. I have a line. I asked you to read the line. The line said it's good in every ward and division of the city. You're not letting me in? Well, what? No.
Yeah, so there you go. Video footage, and that's what every one of us should be doing all across this land today. Keeping track of this stuff, because this is going to be important. We've mentioned this in the past, talking about the 2018 elections, 2016 elections. I mean, this stuff goes all the way back to 2012, probably even further, really, since we started using a lot of the electronic voting machines and all the BS going on at polling stations, electioneering, propaganda put outside, passing out of pamphlets and whatnot. That stuff still continues today, and they obviously think that they are on the right side of history and think that that's going to work in their favor. Well, I hate to tell you, but it's not. 300 judges seated across this country, probably more to come in the second term. It's probably not going to go too well for you. Trying to interfere in an election. So nonetheless, continuing on out of Breitbart there, it says, Will Chamberlain, a poll watcher in Philly, was just wrongfully prevented from entering the polling place. We just saw that. It says, here's a poll watcher certificate. Makes clear that it allows the holder to watch at any polling place in the city. Well, I don't know. Apparently, they must have a little carve-out in Philadelphia for that particular location. It must be Philly Stan or something. I don't know. North Philadelphia, poll watcher denied entry. Democrat committee person seems to be running election board. Will not allow watcher in. Said she is calling her ward leader, who has no official standing. Hashtag stop the steal. So perhaps on Twitter this is trending, or perhaps at Jack at this point is preventing that from trending. Who knows? But apparently that might be one place in that you can find a corralling of a lot of this information. All right. Aside from that, over to InfoWars. Stop the steal. Major voting issues reported at polling stations nationwide, and they're having live updates. There's the Philadelphia example now that we just got done talking about there. Mike Cowdery had this breaking. First illegal sign has been taken down in Pennsylvania. Here we go.
That's all. It's not a problem.
So I'm not sure why people think it's okay to do the electioneering right outside the doorway of polling stations. If I'm not mistaken, at least where I'm at, I think that's got to be, at least a good 100, 200 feet away or something along those lines. And I suspect that most places are probably about the same. So yeah, here again. Let's see. PJ Howie says the illegal sign is not by the door. Well, sure looked like it to me. Legal campaigning inside of a polling location in Philly. Man in Blue is handing out Dem literature to voters in line to vote. This is why Dems are keeping Trump watchers out. They're stealing it. This needs to stop. James Woods even highlighted cheating in Philadelphia, of course. Oh, where's the entrance? Oh, right there. Does that look like 100 feet to you? Maybe about 100 millimeters. Perhaps they have their units of measure wrong with all that Common Core math. I don't know. Says a Philadelphia district attorney actually came to investigate and is seen supporting campaign material illegally displayed at polling stations. There again, more highlights of that there. It says poll watchers are also being denied, which we just covered out of the Breitbart article. Tim Young says, oh, look, a Democrat committee woman is in North Philly wearing a Biden mask, not letting certified Republican poll watchers into a polling place. She ends with, that rule ain't worth being followed when someone says they should be allowed inside. Oh, this ought to be good.
So you go in and you give them direction and they feel they're supposed to follow it.
Ma'am.
That's not happening. Not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen, huh? Well, I wonder what authority these people think they have exactly. Where does their authority come from? Interesting. Richard Grinnell had this, says, at Josh Shapiro, PA at work. Mike Roman, more bad things happening in Philly. Dem election officials have avoided transparency and accountability at every step. Now they're keeping our poll watchers so far from the counting tables, there's no way to actually observe. What are they hiding? This must stop. And perhaps maybe that's the context in which we find ourselves in Philadelphia with all of the rioting and whatnot going on in recent days to serve as a bit of a distraction while they set all this stuff up in the background. Will Chamberlain highlighted again here, says, here's the poll watcher certificate. It makes clear that it allows the holder to watch at any polling place in the city. Unfortunately, what it didn't say is that you could be right up close to the table. I guess, 100 feet away is probably good enough, right? Just get your telescopic zoom lens, I suppose. The Philadelphia GOP reported instances of people submitting multiple mail-in ballots across the state, a claim already being censored by Twitter. Oh, really? Here we go. What exactly is going on there? Nothing shady at all. Here, let me back up that car so whoever's looking across the street can't see. Oh, there we go. Yep. Yeah, see how that works, folks? In the dark of night, hell, even right out in the open broad daylight, they'll try and steal it. In Bucks County, signs outside polling places show Dem candidates, but blur out Republican candidates. Oh, that's nice. In New York, voters are reporting broken voting machines, with officials telling them their ballots will be scanned later. Project Veritas chimed in, says reports of broken voting machines in New York City, same as what we just covered there. Voting machines in overwhelmingly Trump district in Borough Park are broken. Oh, how very convenient.
Ballots in the emergency ballot box. when they're back
What's
up,
the guarantee?
when they're back up, we will scan the ballots. And I mean, and that's something that has to happen.
Don't worry, folks. We'll scan it for you. Just trust us, right? And an inherently democratic precinct, I'm sure. Just trust us, right? Who is it? Stalin that says, "Oh, it's not a matter of who casts the vote; it is he who counts the vote." Right? We see that playing out right there. It says breaking another voting machine in a heavily Trump district is broken. This one is in Flatbush, Brooklyn. Here we go. Yeah, so there you go, folks. It's just very interesting that all these machines just happen to be broken Trump precincts and polling places. But I'm sure on the Biden side, they don't have problem number one now, do they? Because they want every vote to count, I'm sure. So in Alabama, a voter claimed a polling station was handing out campaign material in line to vote. Here we see that information. Hey, by the way, folks, step right up here. Get your little pamphlet. Here's how you need to vote. Exactly. Says all voting machines are down in Spalding County, Georgia. There we see that on a CBS 46. Breaking per Spalding County elections, all voting machines are down. And Houston, Texas, a city councilman explained on Monday how he was given information proving dead people's names are being used to vote.
November 10th, 2020. Introduce yourself, kind sir.
I'm Andrew C. Burks Jr.
Okay.
And I am a former Houston City Council member.
Very good, sir.
And pastor, Big Tabernacle Senior Church on the assistant pastor there.
Yes, sir.
And I'm 70 years old in November.
God bless
So
you, sir. God bless you.
I've been in a lot of elections.
Yeah.
Lots of elections.
And what brings you here today, sir?
False concerns are my concern.
Thank you.
Fraud in the balloting, but it's not just mail balloting.
Yes, sir.
There's fraud also in the electronic balloting.
Of course there is. There's fraud in electronic balloting. We've known that for many, many years. Fractional magic, anyone? Does that ring a bell? So I'll just leave that there. There's plenty more. Got a lot of other coverage to get to here, so we'll jump into that. Out of American Greatness says, report Joe Biden plans to assume role of president-elect if media declares him winner, even amid Trump's legal challenges. Interesting. So he's just going to step right in, by whatever authority the Mockingbird media gives him, apparently. The PR arm of the Dems here will just anoint him, I suppose. Joe Biden is planning to strike a pose as the president-elect on election night if the corporate media decides that he has an insurmountable lead, even as President Trump challenges late mail-in ballots in court. Sarah Fisher has this say, says, if news organizations declare Joe Biden the mathematical president-elect, he plans to address the nation as its new leader, even if President Trump continues to fight in court. Advisors tell at Axios, Mike Allen and Margaret Tlaib, apparently. That per Axios' article says Democrats say they have learned the lesson of the contested 2000 election when they say George W. Bush declared victory and acted like the winner while votes were still being counted, and his Democrat opponent Al Gore hung back. In reality, Gore, then the vice president, didn't hang back at all. Although the networks initially called the race for Gore while the polls were still open in the heavily Republican panhandle, costing Bush untold numbers of votes, Bush was declared the winner by a narrow margin in the wee hours of the following morning. Gore immediately pursued an aggressive legal strategy to swing the election in his favor. He demanded hand recounts in heavily Dem counties, believing that the manual recounts would yield enough votes to do the job. And I'm sure many of you probably remember the old episodes of Hanging Chads. President Trump is threatening legal action because the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ordered a 3-day extension for counting mailed ballots that are received in the 3 days after the election. The legal issue is whether the extension ordered by the PA Supreme Court, relying on voter protections in the Pennsylvania Constitution, violated the U.S. Constitution. The argument advanced by Republicans is that the Constitution gives state legislatures, not state courts, the power to decide how electoral votes are awarded, including whether absentee ballots received after Election Day can be counted. If the anti-Trump media declares Biden the winner, he'll begin forming his government and looking presidential, and won't yield to doubts Trump might try to sow, Axios reports. So I'll leave that there. Again, this is ridiculous, and if the Mockingbird media tries to assert that, we are going to have a interesting campaign on how to subvert that, because we know that the Mockingbird media is in the bag, as is big tech. And again, it's going to fall upon us. It's going to fall upon us, being we are the news now. They are fake news. They are the propaganda arm. They are the misinformation, disinformation redirects. Don't want you to know the truth, and they're not going to tell you the truth. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see if and or when this happens, how we combat that. We're going to have to strategize a bit on that, I believe. In any case, continuing on, out of the Texas Tribune, Harris County voters will only have one drive-through polling site on Election Day. This brought to us yesterday says the closures of 9 drive-through locations follow a series of legal challenges led by a group of Texas Republicans. The county will still offer more than 800 polling stations. Says out of Houston, only the Toyota Center will be available for drive-through voting in Harris County on Election Day, County Clerk Chris Holland said late Monday evening, eliminating 9 other drive-through options for voters to cast their ballots just hours before the polls open. Nearly 127,000 Harris County voters cast drive-through ballots during the early voting period at 10 polling sites across the county, a safer option for some voters during the coronavirus pandemic. Overall, there are expected to be more than 800 polling locations open in Harris County on Tuesday, today. But Holland said he would close most of the drive-through options because of continued legal challenges from a conservative activist and 3 Republican candidates for office. A federal judge earlier Monday denied that group's attempt to have the drive-through ballots cast during early voting tossed out. But the plaintiffs continued to file appellate challenges over drive-through voting late Monday. So the question I would say is, okay, if they close that down, then are people just not going to hop on their feet and go to their local polling stations? Isn't this just a matter of convenience? So what is really the point? I don't know. We'll have to see. Perhaps you guys down in Texas know a little bit more about that than I. In any case, over to Gateway Planet back again, says Tech Tyranny. Twitter censors Tom Fitton's accurate and logical tweet on voter fraud to protect Joe Biden. Again, no surprise based on what we learned when AppJack, Zuckerberg, and Pichai were up on the Hill last week with the Section 230 discussions. Twitter is determined to influence the 2020 election, and boy, howdy are they. Obviously, they've interfered by blocking the New York Post articles surrounding Biden for 12 days, and of course, Jack lying through his teeth about it. Says the far-left social media giant is doing everything it can to stifle free speech in the United States. The leftists on staff believe their words and positions are the only approved speech. And Twitter continues to censor President Trump's account to show him who's really in charge. On Monday, Twitter censored Judicial Watch founder Tom Fitton for posting a completely accurate and logical argument. Tom Fitton tweeted out, counting ballots that arrive after Election Day means countless ballots can be placed in mail after the in-person polls close, but before midnight, and how does this not increase risk of voter fraud? Sadly, this factual and logical statement was not approved by the far-left Twitter gods, and so they censored Tom's remarks. This is the electioneering to help Joe Biden. And there we see the tweet in question per Tom Fitton, and says learn how voting by mail is safe and secure. Of course, they had to flag that, for your protection, of course. Twitter always looking out for the little guy. Sarah Carter. Today, Trump campaign predicts big voter turnout on Election Day for president. And boy, howdy, if the sentiment is based at all on what has gone on in the peaceful protests over the last couple, 2-3 days, that is probably true. She spoke with President Donald Trump's Director of Press Communications, Aaron Perrine, on the Sarah Carter Show podcast Monday, and she had some significant optimistic predictions for election night. She said the campaign expects a big voter turnout on Election Day. She says Trump will win and is strongly encouraging everyone to get out and vote in person at the polls. So we're projecting between 62 and 64% of the votes tomorrow on Election Day are going to go to President Trump, said Perrine. And that means we're going to win 4 more years. The media has been suppressing the support for President Trump, but according to Perrine, 56% of the American people know they're better off now than they were 4 years ago. In order to win Pennsylvania and Michigan, President Trump's Election Day margin needs to be significant. I think that Pennsylvania is very much doable for the president, said Perrine. We on the campaign are projecting an election day vote can cast a margin of over 1 million people over Joe Biden's votes for President Trump. Perrine has been in Michigan with the Trump campaign for the past few days, and it says, I think the Michigan is very winnable for the president tomorrow, said Perrine. The enthusiasm for him is sky high. There are nearly 2 million votes left in Michigan to be cast, and we need to win by about 350,000 votes in Michigan. We're projecting a margin of about 400,000 votes tomorrow, meaning today, in Michigan, said Perrine. And in preparation for election night, cities across America are boarding up their windows and storefronts. So yes, it's an interesting dichotomy, is it not? That on the one hand, we expect POTUS to win because we know that the Mockingbird media has been so wrong, as have the pollsters. They've learned absolutely nothing from 2016. And in the meantime, they've stoked the fires of fear and all of the garbage in that going on in the blue cities that are going to try and do this again. And so what has happened? Well, obviously, to protect their own shops and properties, they've had to board every damn thing up to prevent looting, those peaceful reparations, I suppose. Just transfer of some goods over to me because, they don't need any of that stuff. I'll just take that for my own good. We'll call it reparations and be done with it. And yeah, there you have it. So, and we also wonder why the hell the price of lumber has gone way up. Good God, how many sheets of plywood have these stores gobbled up as opposed to those who actually use it to build stuff rather than just cover up windows? Holy moly. So if any of you guys are builders out there and have had to buy any wood across the country, you know what I'm talking about. All right, over to red state. Biden makes desperate accusation against Trump in front of black voters, and apparently Joe just doesn't know when to shut up. His gaffes are many in that regard. Former Vice President Joe Biden seems to be throwing out any political attack against Trump that he can dream up. It's almost like he's just making this stuff up as he goes. On Monday, Biden told a black crowd in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that Trump does not want them to vote. Can somebody post that in chat where POTUS may have tweeted anything like that? I'll wait for it. In any case, during the campaign stop at a predominantly black community in Pittsburgh, Biden made a last-minute appeal to minority voters. He said, I don't care how hard Donald Trump tries, there's nothing that he can do to stop the people of this nation from voting, no matter how hard he tries. There's a press article last week, and it reads as follows. Never before in modern presidential history has a candidate been reliant on wide-scale efforts to repress the vote as Trump. Trump doesn't want y'all voting. He doesn't want Americans voting, Biden continued. He thinks only wealthy people should vote. Yeah, again, somebody please post that tweet in chat. I'll wait for it. It was a scene reminiscent of his put y'all back in chains comments that he made during the 2012 campaign. The former Veep argued that voters should show up at the polls on election day to show that we're done with the chaos, we're done with the racism, we're done with the tweets, the anger, the hate, the failure, the irresponsibility. Biden, along with his close friends and allies in the corporate press, has made similar allegations against Trump, falsely claiming that the president is trying to prevent black people from voting. It's a common refrain that you can hear in every election season. Democrats pretend there is some widespread effort masterminded by Republicans to keep black folks from casting their votes in some modern version of Jim Crow. And not to be outdone, who did we hear pipe up in the last couple days? None other than Maxine Waters. I will never forgive all you guys for voting against our wishes. In other words, she's saying, stay on the plantation, idiots. I am your master. Donate to me. Vote this way because of your skin color. No, I think perhaps somebody might have had a little revolution like Martin Luther King Jr. back in the day about the content of one's character and not necessarily on the color of one's skin. Apparently, Maxine has learned absolutely nothing from history. And carrying over to the Epoch Times. Today, Ohio's Franklin County using backup system to check in voters after technical problems. And so, obviously, not just Pennsylvania, not just Texas, but Ohio, yet another swing state. Franklin County, the most populous one in the state, switched to paper poll books after they experienced technical problems on Election Day, said Secretary of State Frank LaRose on Tuesday. Franklin County includes the capital city, Columbus. County officials said the Board of Elections will be using its backup paper poll books to check in voters today, according to a statement in the morning. This is why we have contingency plans in place, and the process is working. We decided to go with backup paper poll books to ensure that one voter can only cast one vote. Well, isn't that nice? I mean, we certainly don't want people going around and casting multiple ballots now, do we? Or is that just only a dumb strategy? I don't know. 2012, 2016, how many people got busted for casting multiple ballots? I think I've got some things in the archives along those lines. In any case, there's the Ohio Secretary of State comms team and what they put out regarding that here this morning. Spokesman for Secretary of State Frank LaRose, the state's top elections official, warned that residents may have to wait in long lines to vote. In a statement, the Secretary of State's team wrote that because of the glitch, officials are shifting to paper poll books to check in voters today. It's important to note that this does not impact voting machines in any way and only modifies how voters are checked in, a spokesperson for LaRose said on Twitter. So there you have that. So again, shenanigans all across the country, state by state. We're keeping track of that. And as if that's not enough, Todd Starnes talking about the shenanigans still in Philadelphia. So to pile on, again, if you observe any issues at the polls, please call the below hotline for your state. They listed out for Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Wisconsin, Arizona, Florida, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, Iowa, New Hampshire, Maine, Georgia, Colorado, New Mexico, and Ohio. I'll leave that there if you guys need to screenshot it. There you go. Courtesy of 5x5. There you go. And just in case, that's who you call. The Todd Starnes show team is monitoring voter shenanigans across the country. We will be updating this live blog throughout the day. And again, it's just piling on to the same of what we already learned about Philadelphia here today. Polls have been open for 2 hours in Pennsylvania. Here's what we've seen. Several reports of locations closed. 300 plus people stuck in line. Ballot harvesting. Certified watchers being denied access. But sure, Republicans are the party trying to meddle in elections. Hands up. You know, whatevs. In any case, moving along, out of Washington Examiner, voters face challenges casting ballots on unconventional election day. So yes, there is nothing at all conventional about this because obviously being under the COVID business, nothing is normal about this particular season. And so why would today be any different, right? So on Election Day, state and local governments across the country are working to ensure that voters are able to cast their ballots in a safe and efficient way, especially in unprecedented times. The coronavirus pandemic has turned the presidential election into a highly unconventional event, with millions of voters choosing alternative options to cast a ballot, whether it's by mail, heading to the polls early, or through curbside voting. Prior to November 3rd, over 100 million people had already voted. But problems persist with some voters facing not so smooth experiences in trying to exercise their right to vote on November 3rd. We will continue monitoring the issues, concerns, and challenges being faced on this year's Election Day. Election Protection, a nonpartisan coalition of voting rights activists, is encouraging anyone who faces an issue or encounters problems with casting their ballot to get in touch with them. And see that via Vanita Gupta. Says experiencing long lines today. If you can, please hashtag stay in line. Your voice is important and you should be heard in this election. If you need help voting or encounter problems while trying to cast your ballot, call or text the at 866 OURVOTE hotline hashtag election day. So perhaps that was the number that was in question from the anons on the board today, 866 our vote. Should you encounter any issues or if you have any sort of video documentation of any shenanigans, perhaps that would be the place to send that to. I don't know. Moving on, Washington Times. Conservative commenter accuses Tom Wolf of trying to silence voters in Pennsylvania. And of course, we know Pennsylvania has been quite the hotbed. Both POTUS and Biden both circling the wagons, as it were, in recent days, from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh to various venues and that all across Pennsylvania in recent days, in light of the fact that judges and that have been strapped and allowing more mail-in ballots and whatnot beyond the traditional dates. So, yeah, it's highly possible Pennsylvania could be the one that decides this election. Conservative commentator Wendy Bell falsely claimed Monday that the administration of Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf is attempting to, quote unquote, silence voters by ordering people who were potentially exposed to the coronavirus to stay home on Election Day. In a Facebook post liked and shared thousands of times, Bell asserted that the State Department of Health has sent a letter to thousands of voters informing them that they must remain quarantined and not vote in person on Election Day. If they fail to obey the order, they face possible arrest. Oh, that's interesting. The post continued. Do you believe the Wolf administration is attempting to silence voters hours before the most important election in American history? In a follow-up post that also generated thousands of shares and likes, Bell said the state health secretary, Dr. Rachel Levine, male or female, I don't know, whichever, is trying to keep thousands of Pennsylvania voters quarantined on Election Day. This is big. And in a Facebook broadcast Monday, she called in a stunning, shocking twist. Since many voters who support President Donald Trump have told pollsters that they prefer to vote in person on Election Day instead of voting by mail, which Democrats are doing in far greater numbers than Republicans in Pennsylvania, Bell's implication is that the Dems who run Pennsylvania government are trying to block Trump voters from getting to the polls. So yeah, no shenanigans going on in Pennsylvania, and it's why we're casting such an eye on what is going on there. And of course, Zero Hedge also had this as one of the lead stories here this morning. A Republican poll watcher in the Philadelphia, PA was denied entry to a polling location despite having a valid poll watcher certificate. Again, that's piling on from recent other articles as well. Same clip, Stop the Steal there that we watched previously, again citing the very same certificate for anywhere in the city. Josh Shapiro says if all the voters or all the votes are added up in PA, Trump is going to lose. That's why he's working overtime to subtract as many votes as possible from this process. For the record, he's 0-6 against us in court. We protected voting rights. Now ignore the noise. Vote. Wonder who he works for. Inquirer.com. Interesting. Interestingly, to say the least, what did he mean by that? Sean Davis over at the Federalist says, before a single vote has been counted, Pennsylvania's Democrat Attorney General is declaring that Biden has already won and promising to litigate the state into Biden's corner. Yeah, we'll have to see how that pans out, huh? And in other news, voting machines are reportedly down in Westmoreland and Philadelphia counties, according to @PhillyGOP. And of course, the other highlight here says perhaps this is why Trump has deployed an army of volunteers and paid staff to watch elections in Dem-leaning precincts. Roman has organized what he claims are 50,000 poll watchers. So yeah, you think they're not scared of an army of folks casting eyes on things that they would rather try and do shady business with? Perhaps. Out of big league politics, Michigan pro-open carry group sues Michigan AG for violating Second Amendment rights at polling locations. And so a petty tyrant is trying to flex on lawful Michigander gun owners during election season. And this was brought to us yesterday. Says Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson banned open carry at all polling locations on November 3rd in Michigan. Yep. Says Dean Weingarten of Amaland noted that open carry has been legal in Michigan for the state's entire existence. It's clear this move was motivated by politics, especially in the backdrop of what appears to be the most polarizing election in decades. Benson rationalized this decision on the grounds that people open carrying might intimidate other voters at the polls, thus leading to incidents of voter suppression. Yeah, right. Thomas Lambert, Michigan Open Carry Inc., Michigan Gun Owners, and Michigan Coalition for Responsible Gun Owners banded together in a lawsuit against Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, and the Director of State Police Colonel Joe Gasper to acquire a declaratory injunction against the Secretary of State's unconstitutional action. And there we see part of the lawsuit there. So nonetheless, shenanigans continue in other states as well. The ridiculousness surrounding Michigan at this point is absolutely nuts. Obviously, you've got a governor up there who thinks that she is God. As authoritarian as she is trying to be, also trying to now subvert your Second Amendment rights, even though it's never been an issue before. But today, for some reason, that's off limits. Out of Western Journal, op-ed, 4 disturbingly false things that American voters believe. So this is across the board. Interesting read here. This is with the 2020 election just days away, actually today, says I found myself speculating on how informed the American electorate is. Given a biased mainstream media, I wondered if American voters are able to make an informed decision when they mark their ballots. A few years ago, during an academic conference, MIT professor Jonathan Gruber, perhaps everybody remembers that name from the Obamacare days, right, referred to the stupidity of the American voter, and his comments ignited a firestorm of outrage. But was Gruber wrong when he made those off-the-cuff remarks about the American electorate? Sadly, it appears that he may have been right in his assessment. According to at least 2 recent surveys, Americans are woefully ignorant when it comes to their country and its governance. Ask them to name the 3 branches of their government, and 61% of Americans can't, according to a 2019 survey by the Annenberg Public Policy Center. And I would contend that also extends to those who actually sit in Congress, unfortunately. AOC, anybody? Yeah, and how do these people get elected? It says, it gets better. Ask them to name just a single branch of government, and 22% can't even do that. But in a nation consumed like no other with celebrity, ask Americans to reel off the names of the top rock stars, rappers, Oscar favorites, superstars in the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball, and any number of mindless reality TV shows and their minions, and guess what? You'll have no problem getting an answer. So, while Gruber was pilloried for his remarks, the sad truth is that he was right. American voters are stupid, or perhaps apathetic or indifferent are better descriptions. Lying to them, as the Obama administration did when it was ramming Obamacare through Congress and down our throats, was viewed as an acceptable tactic. After all, they reasoned Americans are too stupid to know what's good for them. Remember President Obama's famous fib? If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your health care plan, you can keep your health care plan. While such a conclusion about the stupidity of the American voter may smack of somebody's opinion, it was backed up in 2018 in a groundbreaking survey by the UK research firm Ipsos. That survey highlighted the political ignorance of over 50,000 people across 13 countries. It found that Americans are second only to Italians in how little we understand our nation and the issues facing it. It says, here are a couple of the questions asked and the results. What percentage of the U.S. population identifies as Muslim? Muslims guess 17%. Reality is only 1%. What percentage of American girls aged 15 and 19 years give birth each year? Americans guessed 24%. Reality, only 2%. Back in 2009, Rick Shrinkman, the founder of the History News Network, published a book titled Just How Stupid Are We? Facing the Truth About the American Voter. Shankman found that Americans, among other things, were ignorant about major international events, knew little about how their own government runs and who runs it, were nonetheless willing to accept government positions and policies, even though a moderate amount of critical thought suggested they were bad for the country, and were easily swayed by stereotyping, simplistic solutions, irrational fears, and public relations babble. Shankman found that Americans, when they do pay attention, do so when they perceive that an issue may impact them, their families, or friends personally. That is not earth-shattering, but it does say something about the fact that Americans, like it or not, are part of the global family. I spent some 2 decades as a foreign correspondent covering stories through Asia and Latin America. During that time, I discovered that relatively few Americans had any understanding at all of the impact events and policies in places like China or Japan can have on their lives. And so this article will continue on, but I probably share that very same sentiment, and that is exactly why folks like myself, Daddy Dragon, etc., talk about the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the Declaration of Independence, because of the very fact that they do such a pee-poor job in our school institutions today. And they like it that way. They don't want us to know. They want us to be very obedient serfs at the end of the day. Just smart enough to push the buttons and not smart enough to question anything, I believe was paraphrasing the quote from George Carlin in his old comedy skits. In any case, last but not least, here today, let's finish this. And that's exactly what we need to do here today. Last but not least, if you want a good feed to follow as to what the other side is doing here on the streets, you might want to check this feed out. It's Going Down News. Obviously, they've got some articles and that they've been posting here over the last several days, last several hours. Let's see. If you're going down, highlighting the crowds. As Trump moves to steal the election and contest mail-in ballots in the courts, he'll count on his supporters causing chaos and violence in the streets while the police turn a blind eye to the violence. No projection at all, and that's a Business Insider Mockingbird Media article, surely. Washington Post. Lastly, Trump and MAGA were written on graves at a Jewish cemetery in an anti-Semitic attack happening in the same town where Trump was organizing a rally. Oh, sure. Yeah, paint a big Q on there. I'm sure that'll attract QAnon type stuff, will it not? While out in Austin, police posed for photos with the far-right street gang, the Proud Boys. So, of course, we got to bring that in. And there's just a host of others in that. So Washington Post, they're pulling all the Mockingbird Media stuff in that fit their narrative. And so that's what I'll leave you with here this afternoon. That is a quick little roundup of things going on around the country here, as today being election day. A lot of funny business going on with various polling stations having issues with their machines, having to rely on backup systems, and I suspect we're going to see a lot more of that. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. We'll see you back here at 9 p.m. Eastern is when we're going to kick things off for election coverage right here on the 5x5 network. Got a host of folks going to be joining us tonight. You won't want to miss that. Some special guests. So do tune back in here, and we will see you then. So take care, everybody. We'll see you then.